The flight school hangar at dawn smelled like jet fuel and old promises. Nolan Mercer gripped his mop handle the same way he'd once gripped a yoke at 30,000 feet, watching the mechanics shake their heads at the Gulf Stream that hadn't flown in weeks. When Brennan Clark arrived with her board members for the inspection tour, he should have stayed silent. Just another maintenance worker in coveralls too big for his frame. But when she stopped at the broken jet, when the head mechanic told her it was the fuel lines, corrupted beyond repair, the words slipped out before he could stop them. It's not the fuel lines. 7 faces turned toward him, and of course hers too, green eyes sharp as glass, taking in his cleaning cart, his stained coveralls, the audacity of a janitor contradicting her chief engineer. Her smile appeared, a mockery full of arrogance. "Well?" Brennan said, her voice carrying across the hangar for everyone to hear. "You're quite handsome, I'll give you that. Shame you're just the cleaning guy." She stepped closer, and he could smell expensive perfume cutting through the diesel and sweat. "Tell you what, fix this jet right now, and I'll kiss you. Right here, in front of everyone." The silence that followed felt like standing in a vacuum. Nolan's pulse hammered, but his face remained calm, a skill perfected over 3 months of invisible labor at Clark Aviation's flight training facility. Ray, the morning supervisor, stood frozen near the tool cabinet. Derek, the head mechanic who'd just been contradicted, had gone red around the collar. The board members watched with uncomfortable fascination, and Brennan Clark held Nolan's gaze with the confidence of someone whose world had always bent to her expectations. She was younger than the industry magazines suggested, maybe 33, her navy suit expensive as armor. The challenge hung between them, designed to put him back in his place while entertaining her audience. She expected him to retreat into the background where people like him belonged. But Nolan thought about his daughter Addison, 7 years old, who'd asked him last night why he worked at a boring cleaning job when he knew so much about airplanes. He'd told her it was temporary, that sometimes adults had to do things for reasons that would make sense later. The truth was heavier. He'd been sent by his father, Richard Mercer of Mercer Aerospace Group, to gather intelligence on Clark Aviation's weaknesses. 3 months of playing invisible, recording every operational flaw. The Gulf Stream behind Brennan represented everything complicated about his assignment. A vintage aircraft, probably one of the first jets her father had purchased when starting the company. Nolan had watched Derek struggle with it for 6 weeks, chasing phantom fuel system problems while missing the real issue, APU contamination affecting the magnetic chip detector. But he'd also seen Derek stay 3 hours past his shift without overtime, and heard younger mechanics talk about how Ms. Clark's father used to take her flying in this plane every Sunday morning. 20 minutes, Nolan said steadily. "I'll need access to part storage and precision tools." He met Brennan's eyes. "And when I fix it, you keep your word, in front of everyone." Brennan's smile widened. "Derek, give this man whatever he needs. Gentlemen, ladies, it seems we're about to be entertained by a janitor who thinks he knows more than our chief engineer." She stepped back, crossing her arms. "I do hope you're as good with your hands as you are with your mouth, Mr. Mercer," Nolan said, watching her eyes narrow. "Nolan Mercer." Derek approached with visible reluctance. "You really think you know what's wrong with her? We've had 3 diagnostic teams say fuel system contamination. Corrosion we can't access without complete teardown." "They're looking in the wrong place," Nolan said loud enough for everyone to hear. "It's the auxiliary power unit's magnetic chip detector giving false readings. Metal contamination in the APU oil triggers the fuel flow sensor shutdown. Clear the contamination, reset the detector. She'll fire right up." Derek's expression shifted. "The APU. We checked oil but didn't consider metal contamination affecting the fuel sensor indirectly." He ran a hand through his hair. "That's why the computer kept throwing fuel system errors, even though lines tested clean." "Common misdiagnosis," Nolan said. Computer software prioritizes fuel issues, takes human judgment to look deeper. Brennan had moved closer. You seem very confident for someone who mops floors. Everyone's got a story, Nolan replied. Mine's just longer than most people ask about. He turned to Derek. Part storage? The next 20 minutes felt like surgery before an audience wanting him to fail. Derek unlocked the parts cabinet, and Nolan worked with the tactile satisfaction he'd missed for months, no longer pretending to be less than he was. Somewhere along this assignment, things had gotten complicated. He'd noticed the mechanics covering for each other during emergencies, instructors helping struggling students without extra charge, a culture of genuine care flowing from Brennan's leadership. Clark Aviation wasn't just a profitable target. It was a community built by someone who believed treating people well was compatible with making money. The APU access panel opened, and Nolan methodically drained contaminated oil. The magnetic chip detector was fouled with metal particles, tiny shavings from a wearing bearing, each piece small enough to pass filters but large enough to trigger safety protocols. He showed Derek the contaminated oil on a clean rag. We should have caught this weeks ago, Derek muttered. I kept focusing on what the computer said instead of thinking about system interactions. He looked at Nolan with frank curiosity. Where'd you learn to diagnose like this? My father believed in understanding systems from the ground up, Nolan said, which was true in ways Derek couldn't know. Richard Mercer had built his empire on comprehensive knowledge, raising his son accordingly. By 20, Nolan could rebuild a jet engine blindfolded. By 25, he oversaw safety protocols for Mercer Aerospace's entire commercial division. He cleaned the detector, replaced the oil, reset the diagnostic software. The board members drifted closer, drawn by possibility of success or failure. Brennan remained slightly apart, but her eyes tracked every movement. When Nolan walked toward the cockpit, the hangar went silent except for distant ventilation fans. The cockpit felt like coming home. This was where he belonged, surrounded by instruments that made logical sense, where skill mattered more than family legacy. He initiated the startup sequence with practiced confidence. The APU wound up with a healthy whine. Cockpit instruments flickered to life. Fuel flow readings stabilized exactly right. The engine responded with smooth rumble. He let it run 30 seconds, then shut down properly. When he emerged, 7 people stared like he'd performed magic. Derek's expression had shifted to awe. Ray looked like he was recalculating everything he knew, and Brennan stood very still, her professional mask slipping to reveal something younger, more vulnerable. Someone whose father's favorite airplane had just been given back. The moment passed quickly, but Nolan had seen it. Well, Brennan said, voice stripped of its earlier edge. I suppose I owe you a kiss. She walked toward him with measured steps, and Nolan realized she was actually going to keep her word, despite the cost to her dignity. She stopped close enough that he could see a small scar above her eyebrow, close enough to notice her hands shaking slightly. Her eyes held his, reassessing him, trying to fit new information into old categories. The kiss was not what he expected, not brief and dismissive, but real, like she was claiming something or proving something. It lasted 3 seconds longer than necessary, and left Nolan unbalanced. When she pulled back, her expression was carefully neutral. That was quite a performance, Mr. Mercer, she said loudly. Then quieter, meant only for him. We need to talk. My office. 1 hour. She turned to Derek. Full diagnostic run on that aircraft. If it checks out, I need a report on why we missed this and what changes we're making. Yes, ma'am, Derek said, new respect in his voice. Maybe we should talk to Mr. Mercer about consulting on other maintenance challenges. Brennan's smile returned, sharp and knowing. Oh, I think Mr. Mercer and I will have plenty to discuss. She walked away, heels clicking with confidence, turning potential humiliation into demonstration of her word-keeping. Derek clapped Nolan's shoulder hard enough to bruise. "Don't know who you really are, but you just did something good here. That jet mattered to the old man, which means it matters to her." He headed toward the Gulf Stream, leaving Nolan with Ray, who looked bewildered. "You're fired," Ray said without heat. "Or promoted. Hell, I don't know anymore. 1 hour, don't keep the boss waiting. And Mercer, whatever you're really doing here, I hope it's worth the trouble you just bought yourself." Nolan stood beside the Gulf Stream, staring at his oil-stained hands. He'd accomplished his father's objective, proving himself valuable enough to gain deeper access. He should call Richard immediately, report success, receive new instructions. Instead, he thought about Brennan's unguarded joy when the engine started, about Derek's unpaid overtime, about whether the legacy his father demanded was worth the cost of his integrity. 1 hour until he faced Brennan Clark and whatever questions she'd prepared. 1 hour to decide how much truth he was willing to tell. The Gulf Stream sat silent, no longer broken. Some things could be fixed if you looked deeper than surface diagnoses. Whether that applied to his situation remained to be seen. The administrative building rose 5 stories, glass and steel reflecting morning sun. Somewhere on the top floor, Brennan was probably having someone pull his employment records, run deeper background checks. She was smart. She wouldn't miss patterns, wouldn't accept convenient lies when truth left gaps. The security guard did a double-take when Nolan approached. "Ms. Clark asked to see me," Nolan explained. "5th floor, executive suite," the guard confirmed. "Heard what you did with the Gulf Stream. Nice work." News traveled fast. By the time he reached Brennan's office, everyone would know a janitor had fixed what stumped the engineering team. His window for anonymity had closed. The elevator gave him 45 seconds to see his reflection and recognize a stranger staring back. The 5th floor was quiet efficiency and calculated luxury. A young receptionist gestured toward a corner office with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the runway. The door was open. Brennan stood behind her desk, silhouetted against aircraft taking off, posture braced for impact. "Come in," she said without turning. "Close the door." The soft click seemed to seal something. Brennan turned, and in better lighting he saw exhaustion around her eyes, shoulders held too straight. She'd removed her jacket, silk blouse expensive in every line. "I'm going to ask you a question," Brennan said, voice stripped of mockery, "and I'd appreciate honesty." "All right," Nolan said, knowing what was coming. "Who sent you? Nobody with your expertise takes minimum wage maintenance unless they're running from something or looking for something. Your application lists high school education and auto bodywork in Wisconsin, but you just diagnosed an APU malfunction requiring years of specialized training." She walked around her desk, leaning against it. "So I had security run a deeper check. Nolan Mercer, born Connecticut. Father owns Mercer Aerospace Group, trying to acquire Clark Aviation for 3 years. Son worked their engineering division until 6 months ago, then vanished. 3 months ago, a Nolan Mercer with fraudulent history appears on my maintenance staff." The silence felt like standing on cracking ice. Every instinct screamed at Nolan to deny, deflect. But looking at Brennan's face, intelligence and hurt beneath professional anger, he couldn't add another lie. "He sent me to gather intelligence," Nolan said quietly. "Operational weaknesses, maintenance protocols, anything helpful when acquisition talks turned hostile. I've been documenting everything. Inefficient ordering, understaffed shifts, outdated software, building a case for why you'd be better under Mercer management." "And did you find what you were looking for?" Brennan's voice was controlled fury. "Yes, your protocols are inconsistent. Parts ordering has 3-week delays bleeding money. Mechanics are overworked, cutting corners. Your executive team spends more time managing perceptions than fixing problems." "Thank you for that assessment," Brennan said acidly. "I'm sure your father will be thrilled. Anything else while you're destroying my company?" "I also found something not in my reports." Nolan said, tone making her pause. Everyone here actually cares. Mechanics stay late unpaid because they take pride in work. Instructors help students on their own time. Ground crew knows each other's families, covers shifts during emergencies. Clark Aviation isn't just a company. It matters beyond profit margins. Your father built something rare, and you've kept it alive. That's worth more than efficient ordering. Brennan stared, conflicting emotions crossing her face. Don't you dare try making this about nobility or discovered conscience. You came to spy. You lied to everyone, including me. You let me humiliate myself. I fixed your father's airplane. Nolan interrupted gently. Didn't have to. Could have stayed quiet, maintained cover, let it stay broken. But I couldn't watch you lose that too. The words hit hard. Brennan turned to the window, looking at planes departing and arriving. When she spoke, her voice was quieter, more vulnerable. That was his favorite, the Gulf Stream. He bought it when every dollar mattered, kept it when we could afford newer aircraft. Every Sunday morning, before board meetings and strategies and reports, he'd take me up, just us and the sky. She paused, and Nolan saw her wipe her eyes quickly. He died 2 years ago. Heart attack in a board meeting, discussing whether to sell to your father. His last words were telling them no, that some things shouldn't be for sale. The weight settled over Nolan. His father had never mentioned it, had presented Clark Aviation as just another target. Never mentioned Thomas Clark had literally died defending his company from Mercer Aerospace. I'm sorry, Nolan said, meaning it completely. I didn't know. No, because your father doesn't care. Doesn't care my father built this believing aviation should be more than profit. Doesn't care we employ 243 people depending on us. Doesn't care I've spent 2 years honoring what he built while staying competitive in a market rewarding ruthlessness. Her voice strengthened. All your father cares about is acquiring us, absorbing us, erasing what made us different. You're right, Nolan said, surprising her. About my father, the strategy, all of it. He'd use everything I learned to destroy what your father built, and sleep fine, because that's business. He took a breath. But I can't give him those reports. Brennan stared. What? I'm not giving him the intelligence. Any of it. The reports, documentation, I'll delete everything. Your weaknesses stay your secrets. He met her eyes. I'm done being my father's spy. Brennan looked at him, expression between disbelief and calculation. Why? You've spent 3 months building this. Your father's counting on you. Your family legacy probably rides on this, because fixing that airplane felt right in a way nothing has for months. Nolan said, because Derek stayed late for someone who mattered to you, because your father died defending something he believed in, and because I have a 7-year-old daughter watching me, learning from me. I want her to see someone who chose integrity over expedience, even when it cost everything. Brennan studied him silently. Your father won't forgive this. He'll cut you off, disinherit you. You'll lose everything. Not everything. I'll keep the parts that matter. My daughter, my self-respect, ability to sleep at night. He smiled without humor. Besides, I'm pretty good with my hands. You could stay, Brennan said suddenly. Voice different, almost tentative. Not as janitor, as engineering consultant. We need someone who sees what our team misses. She stood straighter. Consultant rates, official contract, NDA covering everything you learned. Legal protection if your father retaliates. Nolan stared, processing the offer. You're offering me a job after I admitted corporate espionage. You're offering to destroy evidence that could ruin me. That's worth something. Plus, her smile returned, smaller and genuine. You fixed my father's airplane when everyone said impossible. That's worth something too. Conditions. She continued in executive tone. Comprehensive legal documents. Full disclosure of what your father knows already. Help me fix the operational weaknesses, make us stronger instead of exploitable. And, she hesitated, honesty from here forward. No more lies. If we work together, I need to trust you. I can do that, Nolan said, feeling something tight loosen in his chest. But I need to tell my father first, face to face. He deserves to hear it from me. Brennan nodded. You have until Monday morning. Weekend to have whatever conversation needs happening. But Monday I need commitment. To Clark Aviation. To fixing what's broken. To being someone I can count on. Monday morning. Nolan agreed. You'll have my answer and full commitment. They looked at each other across the office, and Nolan felt 3 months of deception finally lifting. Brennan saw him now, all of him, spy and engineer and father trying to be someone his daughter could respect. Instead of calling security or pressing charges, she was offering him a way forward. Thank you, he said quietly, for this chance when you had every reason not to. Don't thank me yet. You still have to face your father. That won't be easy. She pulled out a business card, writing on the back. My personal number. If things go badly, and they probably will, call me. I've had difficult family conversations about legacy. Sometimes it helps talking to someone who understands. Nolan took the card, feeling the gesture's weight. I'll let you know how it goes. And Brennan, he used her first name deliberately. Your father would be proud. Not just profit margins, but the culture. The way people care. That's harder to maintain than quarterly growth. She looked at him, eyes brightening with tears she refused to let fall. Get out of here before I change my mind about being generous. And Mercer, don't make me regret trusting you. I won't, he promised, walking out feeling like he'd shed a strangling skin. The weekend stretched ahead. Saturday morning, Nolan drove to his father's Connecticut estate, the sprawling property built on aviation money and maintained through relentless expansion. He'd grown up here, learned to fly in the private hangar, absorbed lessons about excellence and winning at any cost. Through tall windows he saw his father in the library, working even on Saturday. Richard Mercer looked older, silver hair, rigid posture, the isolation of someone who'd traded relationships for success. Nolan walked through the unlocked front door. His father looked up, expression shifting through surprise, annoyance, calculation. Finally, Richard said, standing with automatic authority. Your silence has been unacceptable. I've been trying to reach you for 2 days. He gestured toward a chair. Sit. Tell me Clark Aviation is ready to fall. I'm not giving you the reports, Nolan said, remaining standing. I've deleted everything. Clark Aviation's weaknesses stay theirs. Silence built like pre-explosion pressure. Richard's expression cycled through confusion, disbelief, cold fury. Explain why you're sabotaging 3 months of work, throwing away strategic advantage, betraying the family business that gave you everything. Because it's wrong, Nolan said simply. Sending me undercover was wrong. Deceptive intelligence gathering was wrong. Using it to destroy a good company, all wrong. I won't be part of it anymore. Richard laughed without humor. Wrong? Business doesn't operate on morality. Thomas Clark was a competitor, a threat. His death was convenient, his daughters struggling. This is when you press advantage, acquire before someone else does. Thomas Clark died defending his company from you. Nolan shot back. His last words were telling his board not to sell, that some things shouldn't be for sale. He built something beyond profit margins, his daughters honoring that. I won't destroy it. His daughter runs a sentiment-based operation in a competitive market. Richard dismissed. Too many employees, pays them too much, wastes resources on loyalty programs. She's soft like her father, and softness loses to strength. That's reality. No, Nolan said, voice making his father pause. That's your reality. Where people are assets, relationships are transactions, only winning matters. But it's not my reality anymore. I'm done being your spy, done destroying things you see as competition, done teaching my daughter integrity is negotiable for family business. Richard's expression hardened dangerously. You're throwing away your inheritance, your position, trust fund, every advantage I built for you. For what? A crisis of conscience? Misplaced sympathy for a failing competitor? For my self-respect, Nolan said. For looking my daughter in the eye and telling her I chose what was right instead of profitable. For being someone she can be proud of instead of someone who lies and betrays because his father asked. He met his father's eyes. You taught me mistakes are acceptable if you learn from them. I learned. Learned your way isn't the only way. Success doesn't have to cost humanity. People build things worth more than quarterly statements. You're naive, Richard said. Idealistic and foolish, throwing away legacy because you've been seduced by pretty words and a woman who kissed you for fixing her airplane. He shook his head. I raised you better. Taught you to see clearly, understand business requires difficult choices, that sentiment is expensive and fatal. You taught me excellence, competence, that mediocrity was unacceptable. But you forgot to teach me people matter, that relationships are worth more than acquisitions, that success isn't what you take, but what you give up for what's right. He paused. You said that when I was 12, before Mom died. Before the company became everything, before you traded humanity for market dominance. Richard flinched. Your mother's death has nothing to do with this. It has everything to do with it. She died, you buried yourself in work, told yourself building an empire honored her memory, but she wouldn't have wanted this. Wouldn't have wanted you to become someone who sends his son undercover, sees every relationship as transactional, can't remember principles he once believed. Don't bring your mother into this, Richard said, real anger beneath cold control. I'm not betraying anyone. I'm choosing a different path, where I can sleep at night, teach my daughter integrity instead of expedience, not drown in lies to please someone who can never be pleased. He breathed. I'm taking a consulting position with Clark Aviation, helping them fix problems, making them stronger. And yes, I know what that means for my inheritance, position, our relationship. I'm choosing it anyway. Silence stretched heavy with 35 years of history. Richard looked at his son with unreadable expression. Fury, disappointment, maybe grief, quickly buried. Then you're no longer part of this family, Richard said deliberately, coldly. Effective immediately, you're removed from all positions, trust fund frozen, shares forfeit. You'll receive nothing from me, now or in my will. Walk out that door with nothing. Not nothing. I'm walking out with my integrity, with being someone my daughter respects, with building something for myself instead of inheriting something I don't believe in. He moved toward the door, paused. I'm sorry, Dad. Sorry I can't be the son you wanted. But I'm not sorry for choosing this. It's the first choice in years that feels right. He walked out of the house, the life Richard planned before he was born. His father didn't call him back, didn't offer compromise. The silence felt final, making Nolan's chest hurt. But he didn't stop. Down the hallway with aviation photographs, through the foyer with marble and crystal, out into cold air smelling like freedom and loss equally. He sat in his car, hands shaking on the wheel. He'd burned the bridge completely, chosen integrity over inheritance. It should have felt triumphant. Instead, it felt hard and sad, and frighteningly uncertain. His phone buzzed. Brennan Clark. How did it go? Nolan typed. About as badly as expected. Officially disowned and disinherited. But I'm free. Monday morning. I'll be there. Ready to help fix what's broken. Her response came quickly. Good. We have a lot of work to do. And Nolan, I think you made the right choice. Your daughter will understand someday, even if your father doesn't. Sunday, Nolan picked up Addison for their regular weekend. At the park, she chatted about school and piano and a boy named Wesley. He didn't tell her about the confrontation with her grandfather, just existed in her uncomplicated joy. They got pancakes at the place she loved, mismatched chairs and coffee better than expensive restaurants. Addison ordered chocolate chip with extra whipped cream, told elaborate stories about her stuffed animals' adventures. "Daddy?" Addison asked, leaving, small hand in his. "Are you happy with your new job? You seem different, like lighter." Nolan crouched to her level. "I am different. I made hard choices this week, sweetheart. Choices that'll change things. We might have less money, be more careful spending. But I'm doing work that matters now, work I can be proud of. Does that make sense?" Addison considered seriously. "Is it like when I wanted the expensive violin but we got the cheaper one because I wasn't sure I'd stick with it? And you said it's better to be responsible. Exactly like that. Being responsible even when it's hard. Making choices for right reasons instead of easy ones. Then I'm proud of you," Addison said simply, wrapping arms around his neck. "Even if we have less money. Mom says money isn't what makes people good anyway." Monday morning arrived with weight of new beginnings. Nolan dressed in professional clothing, slacks and buttoned down instead of coveralls. He looked at himself in the mirror and barely recognized the reflection. Not the janitor, not the corporate heir, but something in between. Someone building their own identity at 35. The flight school hangar looked different in early light. The Gulf Stream sat in its bay, clean and restored. A small plaque reading, "Thomas Clark Memorial Flight Training Aircraft." Nolan paused, understanding the gesture, honoring her father by returning his favorite plane to service, teaching new pilots where she'd learned. "Thought you'd appreciate that," Brennan's voice came from behind. She'd approached quietly, business casual instead of formal suit, more approachable and somehow more intimidating. "Derek suggested it. If we're flying her again, might as well make her meaningful." "It's perfect. Your father would like his airplane teaching people to love flying." They stood in companionable silence. Finally, Brennan turned, all business. "Ready to work? I wasn't kidding about having a lot to fix. We need to overhaul maintenance protocols, update diagnostic software, reorganize parts ordering, probably fire managers coasting on my father's old friendships. I'm ready. But first," he pulled out a flash drive. "Full disclosure. Everything my father knows from before I came, public records, financial statements, competitive analysis, you should know what intelligence exists." He handed it over. "And I signed the NDAs your lawyers sent. Everything I learned undercover is covered. If I violate them, you can take everything I own." "Which isn't much anymore," Brennan observed without mockery. "Industry gossip travels fast. Richard Mercer disowned his only son over a business dispute." "Worth it. This," he gestured at the hangar, aircraft, morning light, "is worth more than anything I gave up." Brennan studied him. "Come on. Let me introduce you to the team properly. No more coveralls, no more pretending. Just Nolan Mercer, engineering consultant, here to fix our problems instead of reporting them to competitors." She started walking, then paused. "And Nolan, about that kiss?" "Yes. Consider it paid in full. You fixed the airplane. I kept my word. We're even. What happens from here? We build on honesty instead of performance." "I can work with that," Nolan said, following her into the building that felt surprisingly like home. The months blurred together. Nolan threw himself into Clark Aviation's challenges with hidden expertise, working with Derek implementing new protocols. He liked consulting, problem-solving without corporate politics, working with people who cared about doing things right. Brennan proved demanding, pushing him to explain not just what was broken, but why and how to prevent future failures. They fell into easy rhythm, professional collaboration occasionally slipping into something more personal over late strategy sessions. Nolan told her about Addison, divorce, and custody, trying to be a good father while rebuilding his career. Brennan talked about her father's death, inheriting a company at 31, board members who saw her as Thomas's daughter instead of CEO in her own right. 6 months in, Clark Aviation's operational efficiency had improved 18%, maintenance delays dropped 32%, employee satisfaction reached record highs. Brennan presented these numbers at a board meeting with Nolan as technical advisor. After, she found him in the hangar, his preferred workspace despite having an office. "The board wants to offer you a permanent position," she said without preamble. "Vice President of Operations, full benefits, equity stake, seat at the table. They're impressed with 6 months' work." Nolan looked up, genuinely surprised. "VP? That's a significant jump. You've earned it. More importantly, you've proven you're in this for the right reasons. Not espionage or family legacy, but because you care what we're building." She leaned against the workbench. "So, ready to make this permanent?" Nolan thought about his father's estate, the inheritance he'd walked away from without looking back. About Addison asking if he was happy, Sarah saying he seemed lighter, about fixing the Gulf Stream that first morning, choosing integrity, building something from scratch instead of inheriting something hollow. "Yes," he said simply. "I'm ready." 2 years after that morning in the hangar, Nolan stood in Clark Aviation's expanded facility, watching Addison take her first introductory flight lesson. At 9, she was technically too young for official training, but Brennan had arranged a special program for employees' children. Nolan watched her climb into the cockpit, face lighting up with joy he'd felt at her age, small hands reaching for controls with confidence from knowing her father believed she could do anything. "She's got your fearlessness," Brennan said, appearing beside him. Over 2 years, their professional relationship had evolved into friendship and then something more deliberate, both aware of complications and choosing forward anyway. "And probably your stubborn streak. Definitely the stubborn streak." He watched the training aircraft taxi toward the runway. "Thank you for this. She's been talking about nothing else for weeks. Kids should chase what they love, especially when they've got a father who models that. You could have stayed in your father's world, kept money and position and easy path. Instead, you chose the hard thing because it was right. That's what she'll remember." Nolan's phone buzzed, rare text from his father, first in 6 months. "Heard about your VP position. Congratulations. You're building something worth having. Richard." No apology, no reconciliation, but perhaps beginning of understanding. Nolan typed back simply, "Thank you. I hope you're well." Not ready for more, might never be, but the door slightly less closed. The training aircraft lifted into morning sky, carrying his daughter toward clouds and possibility. Nolan felt Brennan's hand slip into his, felt weight of 2 years' work and healing, and becoming someone his daughter could be proud of. The hangar still smelled like jet fuel and old promises, but now new promises too, built on honesty instead of performance, on choosing integrity when it cost everything, on fixing what was broken instead of destroying it. "You know what I realized?" Nolan said, watching the aircraft climb. "That morning 2 years ago, when you challenged me to fix the Gulf Stream, I thought I was just proving I could repair an engine. But I was actually fixing myself, choosing to be someone real instead of invisible." "Good thing you spoke up then," Brennan said, smiling. "Imagine what we would have missed if you'd stayed silent." "I don't have to imagine," Nolan replied, squeezing her hand. "I lived 3 months of that, never going back." The aircraft completed its circle and descended for landing, Addison visible in the cockpit, probably grinning. Nolan thought about Thomas Clark taking his daughter flying Sunday mornings, about legacy measured in moments instead of market share, about building something worth passing on. Some things he'd learned shouldn't be for sale. Some things were worth fighting for when it cost everything you thought you needed. Things like integrity, honesty, ability to stand in full light and be seen completely. Worth more than any inheritance or empire or easy path. The training aircraft touched down smoothly, and through open hangar doors Nolan could see his daughter's excited gestures. Building her own love of flying, writing her own story, just like her father finally learned to do. Watching his daughter chase the sky, standing beside someone who'd given him a second chance, building something that mattered beyond profit. This was enough. More than enough. Everything that mattered, wrapped in morning sunlight and jet fuel and sound of engines carrying dreams toward clouds. The hangar doors stood open, letting in light, possibility, the future Nolan had chosen instead of inherited. And that made all the difference.